The indexes continue to remain range-bound as they close tight for the third week in a row. What's up, guys? It's Brandon with Amphibian Trading. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future updates. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the action. The market remains at a standstill, with neither the bulls or the bears taking control. For the third week in a row, we've closed at pretty much the exact same spot. While this leads to frustration for both the bulls and the bears, to me it does seem that the market wants to move higher. This week, we saw morning gap downs being bought, and the NASDAQ found support at its 21 exponential moving average, which is something you typically see in an uptrending market. The overall price action of the NASDAQ itself remains healthy. The only red flag is breadth. We remain seeing net lows, which you can see with this red background, despite the index moving higher in price. If we flip over to the S&P, it appears we're seeing more broad-based participation. You can see we've had net highs for 10 days now, and on top of that, Tuesday, the S&P triggered a power trend, which you can see with the highlighted green background. One last thing I want to look at is the VIX, which is currently making new lows, closing at levels it hasn't seen since January of 2022. Many could be expecting a pullback now and a spike in the VIX. However, if you look back at periods of sustained uptrends like 2016 to 2018, you can see the S&P had this steady upward trajectory, and the VIX mostly traded around the $12 level, which is still significantly lower than where we are today. So let's go ahead now and take a look at some individual names. Before we jump into actionable ideas, I want to start just by looking at some of the potential leaders of this market. Let's start with On Holdings. Okay, so here we have the weekly chart, and there's a couple things going on. First, this is a recent IPO. We had this 6 weeks up in a row, and then we formed this 6-week consolidation. There's also this trend line coming down from the all-time highs, and then we have our breakout on massive volume that closed right near the peak of the week. This isn't actionable here, but this is one you definitely want to be watching to get a sense of how breakouts and potential leaders are behaving. Let's jump over now to Samsara IoT, which is another potential leader. So this one broke out this week on a nice increase in volume. Similar to On Holdings, this is a recent IPO, had many weeks up in a row before forming a consolidation. We also have the relative strength line pushing higher, so this is another one to watch to see how breakouts are being handled. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump into some potential actionable ideas. First up is HubSpot. This one broke out of this flat base. However, volume was very lackluster, and it's continued to drift sideways rather than make any meaningful progress. We did see some massive accumulation volume as this did run up before forming the last base, but that volume hasn't come back yet. If we flip over to the daily chart, you can see we have this nice trend line now, and it's sitting pretty much right at it. This can offer a fairly low-risk spot using the low of today as a stop. Next up, we have GLBY. Similar to all the other stocks we've looked at today, this one had a nice run up before forming this base, which looks like a cup with handle. If we look at this on the daily chart, we can see volume's been drying up as the handle forms. We're finding support at the 10-week and the 50-day moving averages, and then we have this mini coil, which could offer a nice low-risk spot to take a trade. Lastly, let's go ahead and take a look at Arista Networks ANET. This one was one of the first stocks to break out since we started this latest rally attempt, and now we have our first pullback to the 10-week moving average. This one based for about a year, with each new base becoming healthier than the last. This first base was too deep at 40%, but then we formed this second base that was only 26% deep, and then finally, this latest base was 23% deep, and look at the accumulation coming in on the right side of this base as the stock ran up 6 weeks in a row. So this leader looks good now on this pullback to the 10-week moving average. Typically, the first or second touch of that line is buyable after a stock breaks out. So there are a few ideas for next week. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video or found any of the information useful, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future updates.